Hello and welcome to another analysis behind the news. Another week, another terror attack in the United Kingdom. A vehicle was used to once again mow down people, and then the attackers jumped out and stabbed onlookers, killing a total of 7 and injuring more than 40. Bar patrons had to use bottles and bar stools to defend themselves and others. Why? Because carrying guns and knives are banned. Their government does not recognize that free people have certain unalienable rights. Remember that the next time your locality or state wants to engage in gun control. Leading up to this attack, you would have thought that the world was going to end. The media imploded with the news that President Trump dumped the Paris Accord. Now, any constitutionalist may sum it up in this manner. President Trump ended our involvement in an agreement that was never ratified as a treaty in the Senate, never had any legislation attached to it from Congress. So what exactly did Trump get out of? According to the BBC, the countries agreed to keep global temperatures well below the level of 2 degrees Celsius, above pre-industrial times, and endeavor to limit them even more to 1.5 degrees Celsius. Now this is a Paris Accord. Limit the amount of greenhouse gases emitted by human activity to the same levels that trees, soil, and oceans can absorb naturally, beginning at some point between 2050 and 2100. Review each country's contribution to cutting emissions every 5 years so they scale up to the challenge, and enable rich countries to help poorer countries by providing climate finance to adapt to climate change and switch to renewable energy. And how does one American do that with the full force of the U.S. government behind him? He doesn't. In fact, thanks to the Constitution, he can't. If it were a treaty to be ratified, it would have to go to the Senate. That never happened. If Americans were to follow certain regulations, it would have to have come through legislation from Congress. That never happened. And if Congress were that foolish to do so, states would need to intercede to protect citizens from tyranny, as regulating industry is not among the powers delegated to Congress under the Constitution. Now, let's review that third point of the agreement that the BBC pointed out. Review each country's contribution to cutting emissions every 5 years so they scale up to the challenge. Who's doing the reviewing? Oh, did we fail to mention that this was a United Nations Climate Pact that was signed last year? The United Nations is a house of cards built upon the fragile willingness of its member countries to grant it desperately needed credibility. It has demonstrated time and time again that it can't even regulate itself, much less anything else. But it is the closest thing that the globe has for a world government. So based on the facade that it's a legitimate global body capable of dishing out rules and regulations, the media and many in the federal government think that the UN's mandates need to be followed. They are leading us down the primrose path to tyranny. And as Bill Jasper last year wrote about the UN Climate Pact in the New American, he says, nevertheless, President Obama and the man-made global warming alarm choir continue to insist that we must ignore the science and the economics in a mad rush to adopt one of the most far-reaching schemes ever contemplated to regiment and control all humanity. And that, my friends, is the end goal of those behind this scheme. And how best to lure us into the trap of giving up the ability to govern ourselves, unconstitutionally giving up trillions of dollars that we don't have, and manipulating industries into the ground. The battle for our liberties and freedom won't happen on a battlefield. It'll occur under the auspices of saving the environment, saving the planet, or some other ridiculous socialist platitude. No, the American people won't be bludgeoned to death, but it will willingly give up their republic for world government piece by piece. It'll be a death by 1,000 cuts. Another one of those tools that globalists will use to dilute the ability to govern ourselves is trade agreements. That's how the member nations of the European Union were roped into a superstate, shedding much of their sovereignty. Since its beginning, the North American Free Trade Agreement, or NAFTA, was set up to be the foundation for building a superstate among the North American countries. With President Trump opening up renegotiations of NAFTA, it's a perfect time to dupe Americans into thinking that NAFTA needs to be modernized and brought into the 21st century. Indeed, our latest action alert went out this morning describing the intentions of the U.S. Trade Representative who officially triggered Trump's intent to renegotiate. In his May 18th letter to Congress, U.S. Trade Representative Richard Lighthizer wrote, "Our aim is that NAFTA should be modernized to include new provisions. Moreover, establishing effective implementation and aggressive enforcement." He then outlined goals for a supersized NAFTA that sound very similar to the Trans-Pacific Partnership, the European Union, and the North American Union. What would result from his stated goals? Further suppressed wages and leveling of Mexican, Canadian, and U.S. economies, unelected foreign bureaucrats regulating businesses and entrepreneurs, and expanded and aggressive enforcement of bureaucratic environmental and business regulations, and moreover, the merger of police and military for North America. For by leveling the economies of the three nations, the easier it is for them to merge into a superstate, like the EU. In fact, according to CNBC, U.S. Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross said last week that he is open to resuming talks on a trade deal with the EU. This is the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership, or TTIP. It would basically see the U.S. become part of the EU. So we would be part of the regional North American Union through NAFTA renegotiation, and part of the EU through the TTIP. All of these alphabet soup trade agreements would silently slice away at our country's independence and eventually at our liberties. Is that the kind of America you want to live in? One that is ruled by unaccountable bureaucracies? If not, then we need you to get active and get involved. We have just launched a Get Us Out of NAFTA page at jbs.org. Visit it at jbs.org/NAFTA and take action by contacting the U.S. Trade Representative and then contacting President Trump and your representative and senators in Congress. The U.S. Trade Representative is accepting public comments until Monday, June 12th. So don't put it off. Do it today. We've already had some pushback by congressmen stating that NAFTA renegotiations will have to go through the Senate for ratification. Well, they're partly right, but mostly wrong. NAFTA is an agreement, not a treaty. Both the House and the Senate had to pass legislation to implement its provisions back in 1993, and that's exactly what happened. So both houses of Congress will need to be included to ratify any renegotiation of NAFTA and or to get us out of NAFTA. But don't believe me, look it up for yourself. Again, visit jbs.org/NAFTA to get involved and tell them no negotiations. Get us out of NAFTA. And be sure to like and share this video with family and friends. Sign up for our e-newsletters and subscribe to our social media channels. Until next time, we'll see you then.